The war on water, because it's actually a war and it became pretty bloody in France last weekend. So I want to explain to you what happened, because in the news we've seen people on the street in Paris for the retirement, the pensions, burning some of the trash that's not being collected. All this is very true and it became more violent than usual. All true, but nothing compared to what happened this weekend, not even in Paris. It was in the countryside over water. Yes, you heard it, water. Very interesting, because what happens over there can very well happen here. So, hello everyone, I'm Anne, the Little French in Big Texas. If you don't know my channel yet, I do a bit of different things, homesteading, homeschooling, some news, stores, visits around Texas, and maybe internationally later this year. So if that's of interest to you, make sure to hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and thumbs up for that video as well. But let's get to it. So the war on water. So if you remember last year, we had a very hot and dry summer in many places in the world, but it includes in Western Europe. Extremely dry, so dry that some of the rivers went completely, nothing, pretty much gone. And not just in France, it happened in Spain, in Italy, even in the UK, they were complaining it was just too hot and dry. So it was really concerning, a very tough drought in Western Europe. After a tough summer, we're just hoping that the winter and the fall is going to bring spring as well, a lot of rain, right, to compensate and fill up all the underground water. But it's not been the case. So starting in January, the government already said that they needed to think about restrictions and how to ration water because it did not rain enough to pretty much face another hot summer. So they were thinking about it, discussing, putting some measures and so on. And at the very same time, they are starting to increase, because there's already been some, but increase the number of, I don't know how you call it in English. It's like, they call it basin, which is like a huge retention pool for water. And we already had some, especially on the western side of France, but they're increasing their numbers. And the idea of this, I was not familiar with it. Initially, I thought, well, a big, large pool for water retention, why not? We collect rainwater. When it rains, it stays in the pond. Makes sense, right? But that's not the case. This is not for rainwater. This is where I thought it was interesting. They're actually pumping underground water during the winter when it's supposed to rain, and with the rain refill the underground water. So they're pumping it out at the same time to store in this huge retention pool. And when I say huge, the smallest one, maybe 20 acres, smallest, and then it can go up to 200, 300 acres. So it's enormous retention pools. So they're pumping in the underground to fill up the pools. So the farmers around are complaining, saying, okay, you're pumping, but my well is dry now because you pumped and it's not raining, so it's not refilling the underground water. So there's a lot of controversy on these retention pools, especially given, honestly, a lot of it gets evaporated as well. So you're pumping and at the surface, about 20% evaporate. So we're losing 20% of this underground water. And there's also the question of who's going to benefit from these retention pools, right? Is it going to be the small farmers or the very large producers? Because some of them are complaining, saying, well, it's going to the large cereals producers, the one that produce corns. Corn, we barely eat in France. We're not too much into corn. It goes to the animals and it needs a lot of water. So it's not a good cereal to grow in these conditions. So a lot of discussions. And when people are not happy in France, what do? They protest, right? They go on the street and they protest. And here they decided to protest in one of these new huge retention pool. It's been digged, but it had not been filled up. So what the farmers in the surroundings wanted to do is go and actually stay in that pool, sit in the pool because they didn't want to have it filled. So that was last Saturday. They marched there and it got very violent. The police was there as well. They were ready for it. All around the pool, pretty much not letting people get into it. And it's starting kind of a war zone, literally a war zone, which depending on which media you hear different stories. Apparently on the farmer side, so some came like very peaceful, you know, they had even like floating devices, like to float in a pool. I mean, really friendly. And there were others that came, which might not have been farmers, but they just came to use the protest and actually fight. So you had a handful of people who were there just to fight, and it just got out of proportion. There were journalists that say that there were some hand grenades that was thrown to the protesters. A lot got injured, some of them at the head, a lot of blood. So this is not what you would call a peaceful protest, and it was not a peaceful reaction from the police force either, because they were ready and they really fought back. And they fought back with some devices that were kind of surprising to some of the journalists that were there, and said, I've been to a lot of protests. I've never seen that. Never. I mean, some of them, I mean, they were bleeding from the ears because of the noise. I mean, it was just out of proportion. But that's the reality. Let me share with you my screen so that you actually see it, because this is not being reported in any of the news, unfortunately. And it's there, it's happening, and it's happening bad. So let me try to share my screen. I have a few let me do maybe my entire screen here so that you get to see everything, and I can switch. Might just be easier. Let me share the full screen. So these are the pictures from Sainte Soline where it happened. So as you can see, this is just not peaceful. Look at these cars here. So that was the police. These were the police cars. You had two protesters that were extremely severely injured. When I say severely injured, they were not sure they were going to make it. One of them actually woke up yesterday from the hospital, but it's not easy. So another picture here, just to give you the idea. They came with masks. I mean, some of these protesters came all ready for the fight. Gas masks on. A joke. A joke. That article I found quite interesting because it explains really what happened, and it explained in English. So what are France's mega reservoirs and why are they so controversial? Yeah, so here I already explained. So what are these reservoirs? They are enormous basins that store water that farmers can use to water crops and do other agricultural work during the spring and summer months. So far, so good, right? They look like huge swimming pools, but also have pumps and pipes around them. Yes, because they pipe the water from the underground. And yes, they're supposed to pump it during the winter when the water table is supposed to be replenished by rain to store for drier months, except that this year it was not replenished by rain. So the intention is that farmers have an uninterrupted source of water and do not need to take underground water in the summer where there is less rainfall. So it's all nice idea, but we need the rain in the winter as well. And when we say farmers, is that going to all farmers? I don't know. And there are quite a few of them. The government's website suggests that there are around 100 such projects, but apparently the other side says it's closer to 300. So quite a lot of them. They are on the west side of the country. And yes, you have arguments that are for them. So the scientists are saying this is a good thing to do. So of course, the government is backed up by scientific research and papers and so on. When they dig this, it's all legal, all approved. But on the side of the farmers, it's just not there. See, critics and campaigners said that they represent unfair water sharing practices. and a theft of water at a time when water is becoming scarce and groundwater levels are historically low. Unfortunately, it is the case. And they mentioned, see, 20% of water that we lose due to evaporation. And that's the thing I don't understand. Losing 20% when you got low water reservoirs, it's just stupid, completely stupid. Over the past few months, the water table has not been replenished as usual. Yeah, with environmental experts are warning that this will likely cause a severe lack of water this summer. Yep. Prefectures and local authorities have already begun to impose water restrictions as a result. And we're just March, which is supposed to be one of the most rainy months of the year. So yes, it is legal. I can already tell you they went to all the official channels, so it is legal, unfortunately. So what happened at Sainte Soline, so it was, well, actually this is this Saturday. So there's another one happening again with 10,000 people, but there were a lot more last weekend. So organizers said there were 30,000 people present, while the police, gendarmerie, put the figure closer to 6,000. I said the two sides are not telling you the same thing, sharing the same information. The figures are different. The arms used are different as well. You never know what to believe at this point. Campaigners claim there are at least 200 protesters that were injured, and that, based on the pictures I saw and the journalists I heard that were present, is pretty close to the truth, I'm afraid. Of the 3,000 law enforcement officers present, 28 were injured and 2 were hospitalized. 2 journalists were also injured. Yes. So this is just, investigations are underway to determine what happened. Yeah. One protester remained in the coma after being hit by an as yet unidentified projectile. Unidentified. Official figures said that 7 protesters were taken in by emergency services and 3 were severely injured. And I've seen some pictures that were pretty nasty of their injuries in the legs. Like the chair was broken. They had some pieces of metal inside, like when you go to war. I mean, this is just very much insane here, what happened. So it's becoming a fight here. It's really becoming a fight. So that is in addition to the already existing fight over the retirement. So if I switch here, I think we had some pictures. So that's typical picture of the street of Paris where they're burning trash, given the trash is not being collected and they're protesting. They're burning it on the streets. There's been some damages made and people are still protesting, not happy. It's not being set yet. So the government on the pension is going with an executive order. It's not been overruled by parliament. So right now it's sitting with the Supreme Court, the equivalent of the Supreme Court that has not yet decided which side to roll. So we will see. Not set yet. We might, at the end, maybe end up with a national vote, a referendum, to decide yes or no. But if you ask the people, do you want to work 2 years more? I mean, what are they going to answer? Seriously? So I really doubt we're going to go to vote, but I don't know. We might. So, guys, I wanted to keep you posted. As I said, what happens over there can happen here. So I hope you found this useful. Watch out on the water, because this is extremely concerning. Very concerning, not just the fact that we're low in water, we are, and not just in France, not just in Western Europe, but the way it is handled, what's being done, and how this clash happened. As I said, it's hard to tell which side is right or wrong, and how this all went to war, but it happened. And the way the police reacted was extremely strong, wanted to clash on the other side. Very strong. On the other side, where you had a handful of people who came for war, just a handful out of 30,000, maybe you had 1%, but it was enough to create that mess. So some food for thoughts, and I wanted to share. So guys, as I said earlier, if you haven't yet, hit the thumbs up button, and thank you all for watching.